adjust your dial. It is the art of life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Leon. We're broadcasting live. That's right, the magic is live here in the heart of Honolulu in Pioneer Plaza. Our last show down in the dungeon known as Basement 30. And next week, as I said before, we're going to be moving on up to the 8th floor. How exciting is that? So we have a very exciting guest, and I dare say that all of our guests on the art of life are exciting. And we have a man of many, many skills. He's laughing, but he knows it's true. Mr. Robert Kapanui Lopaka, as some of you might know him, a storyteller extraordinaire, but many other things, an activist, a kumu, a teacher, and I would say when someone knows the stories of the land, you are the continuing voice between the ancestors and the people of tomorrow.
Wow, that's a tall order.
Well,
what do I call that?
but it sounds really good. Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Glad
I'm
to
so
be here.
glad you could join us. We want to tell our viewers out there a little bit about who you are. Some of us in the know about you, but we want everybody to know about you. So tell us about yourself.
Well, currently, along with my wife, we own Mysteries of Honolulu.
Okay.
And it's a continuation of a ghost tour business that Glenn Grant started. My beginnings actually happened when I was a little child, about 6 years old. I was in Children's Hospital, having to clean out my kidneys. And it's because of my stay at the hospital that I began to have these experiences, because I'd come so close to dying on many occasions. And so my Hanai grandmother would come and sit with me every single day, read me a story. And by the time it was right for me to go home with my Hanai parents, when we got home, I told them that, Grandma would come every day and she would talk to me about her life in Hilo and all these other stories. And they asked me specifically what she was wearing. So I said it was sort of a mugu with little white petals on it, and she had the horn-rimmed glasses with this little chain around it. And my Hanai father goes into the bedroom, brings out a picture, and it's the exact same picture. And they told me that we know how much you loved her, but we couldn't tell you after you were already in the hospital that she'd passed away.
So, I just got some chicken skin.
Right, so during the time she was visiting me, she'd already been gone. Wow. And that's pretty much the start of everything.
You can't top that.
No.
You can't. And how wonderful to have the connection with family.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And, family's never gone. They're always there, whether you like them or not.
It's
What
true.
does that say for in-laws? Anyway.
That's fantastic. So, gosh, so many things that you mentioned, so I'll try to keep it in order here. So you have this wonderful foundation of knowing that there's a connection with what we'll call maybe the other world, or do you have a preferred term when you like to reference people who've crossed over? Is there something that's maybe preferred?
I would say conscious or cognitive energy.
Okay.
We can call it the soul or the afterlife, or what the Buddhists say is another state of being.
Right. Would you say there are certain things that allow for that, or would encourage or make it more probable to have an encounter? Would an energy be able to pick up on a welcoming energy, or would they come when there's a message that has to be received or given? Or do you have no choice in the matter? It just happens if it's going to happen?
Well, the thing about that is everything you've just mentioned, in my short experience in life, I've experienced that none of that is possible without the human entity present in the environment.
Okay.
And so in the study of parapsychology, it's about how the power of the human mind survives the physical death of its own body. And so according to those studies, you have what is a conscious or a soul or a telekinetic kind of energy. And it is possible to express itself by appearing as an apparition to someone, by communicating through clear audio, through hearing or feeling. But all of that is dependent upon the human being who can receive those three signals.
I see.
And some can only do one of each, and others can get the whole thing. And so as a result of that, on my tours, I never guarantee anyone that they're going to see something, but what I do tell them is that if anything does happen, it's dependent upon the energy of the group or the individual. And so again, from my short experience in life in general, there are residual and cognitive signals all over the environment, especially here in Hawaii. How we receive those signals is dependent upon our ability to either manifest them or to accept it.
Yeah, you mentioned something that, again, when the synapses start firing off, I know it's a good thing. I'm curious, some people would maybe discuss about the option of keeping their body or their vessel very clean or pure, and those are kind of loaded terms. But let's say with the absence of any type of substances that would alter their states, whether that's smoking, sniffing, snorting, injecting, or drinking anything, keeping the body as when you wake up in the morning. And some individuals might use different types of medicinal plants or herbs to invite spirits or maybe invite the opportunity for communication. What is your understanding of that? And maybe from a cultural perspective, how has that been, maybe, what's the approach of that?
It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
Lawyers who work here in downtown Honolulu who get off of work a little bit late, and these are lawyers, people who went to school, to law school, to be educated, who are not taught to believe in, otherworldly things, have encountered ghosts in downtown Honolulu on Mauna Kea Street, on Hotel Street, and the ghosts seem very frenetic, very upset, and really not sure about where they are, if they're coming or going. But come to find out, these are ghosts of people who were abusing drugs when they were in the physical form, as opposed to a hospice in Hawaii Kai, where the patients die peacefully, have a good, healthy life toward the end. And those entities, those energies are a lot more easier to receive and communicate with.
I might mention also for our viewers who are familiar with the Chinatown area, the scene of some pretty horrific fires at the turn of the last century.
Absolutely.
So lots of unpleasant is the kindest way of putting something, but very unpleasant activity that's happened in Chinatown.
Yeah.
So interesting. Wow. So here you have this connection with this ability where you can have this interaction with the other side, the other realm. How did that create a foundation for you to want to pursue that and to share this ability or to tell the stories? Because some people might just keep it private. They may never tell anyone else that they've had this experience. But here you're in a position where you can share that knowledge and those experiences with other people.
Right. It wasn't until the last 2 years of my biological mother's life, which I didn't know was actually the last 2 years for her, where I was able to literally sit at her feet. And along with my auntie Ella, the two of them taught me everything I know culturally.
Right.
And these were things from their own life experiences. My auntie Ella being a practitioner of traditional Hawaiian healing. And the first thing my mother told me after I explained everything that I'd gone through in my life up until that point is, you're not crazy. And you're not going to go to hell. And I asked her, well, why am I having these experiences? And she says, it's because you're Hawaiian. And your experiences are part of our environment. In spite of what's here in a Western sense,
Right.
the communication that's happening now is ancestral. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so she began to explain about things where if you were a member of our family and you had status in the community, when you had passed, we were not going to bury you in a graveyard and visit you once a year. We're going to do you the honor of putting your body in the imu and steaming the flesh off your bones.
Wow.
And keeping your bones so we can deify you to become an aumakua, a protective guardian of the family, so that when we saw your ghost, we were not afraid of you because we knew who you were. And you would appear to us at certain times to say, maybe today's not a good day to go fishing.
Okay.
Or perhaps you shouldn't go hunting with that particular person alone.
Right.
Things like that.
Oh, I have a feeling we're going to need to have you for more than one show because
sorry.
no apologies needed. What a joy. So being part Chinese, where yes, we do just put somebody in the ground and go once a year and deal with Baisan and Qingming, the use of the bones is so interesting, and also I think shed some light on a very sensitive topic as well, which is development, and when they unearth things for progress. Notice the clearing of the throat there, whether that's rail or building, and they find remains or evi or bones. Clearly, it's easier to understand why there's concern that these have not been dealt with in a sensitive way.
Right. Absolutely.
Could you talk to me a little bit about the aumakua? Because some people might have like a very base or layperson's understanding, the pueo, the owl, or maybe the shark. They associate different animals with having mana, having importance and significance, but maybe they're not aware that it's something to do with the family, and that it's an individual that's, I would say, maybe associated with each of those animals. Because I think when people start to do things like pig hunting, or, you know, killing a shark that might have taken off somebody's leg, maybe they're not thinking of the cultural significance of these animals to the land.
Mm-hmm. I want to quote a very good friend of mine who's a professor at the University of Hawaii. She's a doctor of Pele. That was her thesis.
Okay.
And she was instrumental in helping Puakea Noblemeyer write this book about Hi'iaka. One of the things she said in her class was, if some of you students of Hawaiian heritage can identify your aumakua as a shark, then it's that particular shark who's the aumakua of your family. And she said, that doesn't mean that you can jump into a school of sharks and expect not to be eaten alive.
Right.
It's only that particular shark that's your protector. And so it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get this back up there.
Someone was playing with you.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it undid itself.
Yeah.
And so other families from Molokai, their aumakua are the mo'o deities. And a lot of these mo'o deities are female. Others on Hawaii Island have the caterpillar as an aumakua. And some have the pueo. Other families have rains, certain types of rains that are their protectors, and winds and cloud formations.
Okay.
But all of those things are specific mainly to that family alone. And so again, don't go out into a hurricane or, you know, a rainstorm expecting not to get wet. It's only those manifestations that are your family members.
Ooh, so much to think about. We have to take a little break. Think about what type of animals maybe make themselves known to you when you go out, because a lot of times they will, and maybe didn't make the connection. This is The Art of Life.
Aloha, my name is Miley Scarpino, and I'm the host of the Empower Hour. If you're interested in health, nutrition, fitness, here on the island of Oahu, want to learn more about places to train at or different trainers available, then watch my show on Fridays at 3. We have a great time, and I hope that you'll come join us. Much aloha. Now go get swole.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Aloha, this is The Art of Life. If you haven't had chicken skin once, well, we might have it with the second round here with our second part of the installation. We have a gentleman, Mr. Lopaka, who does many things, as we mentioned earlier. Right now, he's sharing with us his world of storytelling and sharing secrets. Would you share secrets? Because some of these things seem a little secretive, perhaps.
I think one of the more well-known secrets are the underground passages underneath the Iolani Palace.
Tell us about it.
Right. So there's a cave system called Pohukaina that begins at Kualoa Ranch. I was fortunate to be able to stand in the remnants of that cave system, but apparently it ends underneath the Iolani Palace along with another cave system. And so rumor is that this is specifically why Kalakaua wanted to keep the palace where it was. And it was that cave system that he would use to privately worship the bones of his ancestors, which used to be the original burial mound on the grounds of the palace.
See, you can always learn something new. I am learning so many things today. Thank you. I want to transition a little bit into someone that we both knew, you better than me, but Mr. Glenn Grant, who is no longer with us in the physical form, but a fantastic storyteller himself, a bon vivant, an artist, I don't use that liberally. He was artistic, creative, and knowledgeable, and really dynamic, and kind of like a gumshoe, kind of like a throwback to a film noir type of character, a fan of the fedora and the trench coat. I met him when he was hosting some film festivals at KCC in the old chapel, and they had Betty Boop features, and I thought, well, I'm going to dress up like Betty Boop and sing and dance. That's what you do when you're 18 years old. And it was so sweet because before I left to go to college, they had a Betty Boop cake made for me as a send-off, but I think I had come down with a cold, and it was the one film festival session I couldn't make, and they were so sad. But he was such a neat man. Tell us about your friendship with Mr. Grant.
Originally, Glenn had planned to train my cousin Keone Nunes, who's a master traditional tattoo artist. And I guess things didn't happen that way, and so it ended up being me. And I don't say that in an egotistical kind of way, because I never expected to carry this on. And so in his old store, The Haunt, I think it was a book signing for Nanette Napoleon's Oahu Cemetery book.
Great lady.
Great lady. He announced to everyone, everyone, this is Lopaka Kapanui, always mispronounced my name. And he said, but finally I have a Hawaiian, who can do these tours.
Right.
And that actually did happen. The thing for me that cemented my aloha for this man, and it doesn't matter what people say, because I was there, he was there, and this actually did happen. I was out of work for 6 months, and I'm not sure how he found out, but there was a ring on my door one afternoon. I opened the door, he was standing there, and he reached in his pocket and handed me a blank check. And he said, listen, I know you've been having a hard time, but go ahead and take care of your family. And I kind of refused it, because I said, I'm kind of unemployed, I'm having a hard time, so I don't know when I can pay this back. And he said, I don't care about money. He said, just take care of your family. Before he left, he said, but don't go crazy, but just take care of your family. And that was pretty much it for me.
Wow.
And he sometimes referred to himself as a Jewish kid from Hollywood. He had a horrible fear of dogs. And so a famous story concerning him was that he was, along with a few of his friends, playing in a plastic swimming pool. And the stunt double for Rin Tin Tin climbed over the fence, jumped into the middle of the swimming pool. All the kids scattered, but he was mauled by this dog. And so that started his fear of dogs. Unfortunately, according to his sister, who was there at his services, she and Glenn's older brother took Glenn when he got back home, all bandaged up, put him on a lawn chair in the front of the house, and charged the kids in the neighborhood a nickel so they could see the wounds inflicted on their brother by Rin Tin Tin's stunt double.
See, that was probably the clincher that cemented it, because my Uncle Gary's dog, Ruffles, sorry, Uncle Gary, bit me on the okole, and I still love dogs, so, but then I wasn't paraded around and charged a nickel for anything. Wow. So he brought you under his wing, and how does one teach somebody the art or the craft of storytelling? Is it, I don't think there's necessarily books. It seems like more maybe a mentorship or an apprenticeship, or was it just talking story, or how does that manifest?
It was a combination of all of those things. And of course, he told me, hey, here, go and read the stories that I wrote. But the one thing he did emphasize is he didn't want me to be Glenn Grant. He wanted me to be Lopaka. And he said, one day you'll collect enough of your own stories that it'll be your own tour, because you don't have to be like me. And he mentioned hiring a storyteller like earlier on in the 70s who ended up doing the tours exactly like Glenn, in Glenn's voice and his mannerisms. Yeah. So he said, that's not what I want you to do.
Exactly. You have a fantastic website. We got to put a plug for that. And I only stumbled across it because, well, one night I was on this thing called Facebook. You might have heard it. And I saw a link for it, and so I went down the rabbit hole. And, I read one entry of your blog, and then it was 2, and then it was 3, and it was like watching really great episodic television. Potato chip theory, you can't just have one.
Right.
I couldn't stop reading your blog, not only because it's so well written, but the information in it and the content was just so juicy, and I learned so many things about the place I live in. And I felt kind of ashamed. I thought, I kind of know something about Honolulu, and then I'm reading your blog. I'm like, what? Pretty amazing stuff. Share something with us that's your favorite, perhaps not moment when people come on tour and you share something with them and they're like, woo, socks are just blown off. Or maybe in Hawaii we say the slippers.
Right. It had to be the moment when I was talking about a haunted classroom at a public school here in Honolulu, and I can't mention the name of the school, but
the enrollment will go down.
yes, and I guess the story was significant enough that as we left Kailua, a woman sitting in the front of the bus said, "We're not going to my school, are we?" I said, "No, where's your school?" She goes, "It's the one you're talking about." She's like, "It's not really haunted, is it?" I'm like, "Oh, sorry, but you know, there's just too much information to dispute that it's not haunted."
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh my God."
I'm curious, sometimes there are stories or incidents that seem to be a little more commonplace and people embrace it or they share it or they're aware of it. So many people who live in Hawaii, at some point they'll hear that you're not supposed to bring, let's say, pork over the pali, and then they have various reasons, and I'm not sure if they necessarily know what it is, so maybe you can explain that to us. And then there are other stories that seem to, they happen, but then they go underground. So it's a two-part question. The first is, what do you think makes a story where it's kind of traded, like it has currency and value? And then what determines when a story or an incident happens, and then it kind of just goes underground? Like, what forces keep certain stories quiet, and which ones make the blockbuster stories?
I think the common blockbuster story that's been around since ancient times is the epic battle between Pele and Kamapua'a. And without going into the whole epic, they cohabitated for a while, and it was a love-hate relationship.
He was the pig man, part pig, part man. I know you think all men are pigs, but not the case.
Yes, he was the pig god.
Yes.
And so finally, as they were cohabitating in Pele's place, she found out that he was being unfaithful through her sisters and other villagers who had come to tell her. And so the story goes, when he's returning home one day, there's a huge tidal wave, blotting out the sun, and he thinks to himself, how is it that a tidal wave is emanating from the mountains? And he realizes it's a tidal wave of lava.
Oh.
And he says to himself, oh, she found out. And so as he's running for his life, he finally makes it into to Hilo, at a hill called Kauku. And so he does his chant, the Ua Kanilehua falls, the rains are a deluge on the lava, and it cools off the heat. Pele appears and says, well, I can't kill you, so what are we going to do? And he says, let us make this agreement that from now, the Kona side of every island will be yours, dry, hot, and arid. And the Ko'olau side of every island, with the exception of Molokai, where I was defeated in battle, will be mine, lush, green, filled with life, and that none shall cross into the other's territory. So Pele says, agreed. And so if this legend is correct, then you're not supposed to bring pork from the windward side to the leeward side.
Fascinating.
And so we had an incident where a young man wanted to make an offering to Kamapua'a when we were at the Pali Lookout. And so I've sort of figured out where that spot is. So I told my now fired assistant, please take this young man to go make his offering and come back. And there's a picture on the website that shows the assistant and the young man coming back, and he's holding in his hand sharshu bao, gauji,
Right.
and different types of pork, and there's a green swirl of mist under his hand. And so I freaked out, and I asked my assistant, what are you doing? He says, well, you told me to take him down the road and put the stuff down and come back. And I said, I didn't tell you to tell him to pick it up and bring it back, because now it's defiled. And I said, and you're defiled, and so are all of us.
Oh.
And so later on that night, I came back and did supplications, prayers of forgiveness. And for me, that was significant, because it shows that although the old gods are not worshipped as much as they used to be, they're still here. And a lot of what's here still belongs to them.
Thank you.
What's the other part of the question?
What was the other part of the question?
The other part was the story that goes underground.
Yeah.
So the story that keeps resurfacing and keeps disappearing is the murder of Don Bustamante in 1975, I believe. That young girl's ghost used to manifest consistently when we used to go up to the old road next to the Koala Ballrooms, is it? The old Kionoli
Yeah.
Road. And there were 3 women who claimed to be witches. They were Wiccans. And the youngest one in their group was on the tour that night as part of her initiation. Her test was to channel a spirit that it had lost. And so I said nothing about the spot we were at. And as I began to talk about the Bustamante case in the back of the group, and this is in the pitch dark, we can't see in front of our hands like this, I suddenly hear in the back of the group, every sha-la-la-la, every whoa. And we all turn around, we're freaked out, and I guess she's channeling the ghost of Don Bustamante, and she says, when this girl was sad, she would listen to these songs.
Oh, wow.
It made her feel better. And she says, thank you for coming. But justice has not yet been served. Yeah.
You know, you talk about missing persons, and I think a lot of times people might be under the impression that in a place like paradise, like Hawaii, these things don't happen, but sadly they do. Do people ever think that because you have this connection and you tell these stories, do they seek out services and ask you to help them find somebody, or if someone has gone missing? We've had notable missing people, Diane Suzuki, and the poor young Chinese girl. Every time I go past 7-Eleven by Nu'uanu, she was selling, I think, benefit chili, and she disappeared. Do people ever contact you maybe to aid them in the process of trying to locate their loved ones, or does it ever come up?
We haven't been contacted in regards to those things. There was a young woman that I was sort of helping, and there was a recent case where a Filipino mother just parked her car and disappeared a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so
It was on Mother's Day.
right.
Yeah.
And so I talked to the lieutenant on the case, the detective, and told her, to call this person. And she said, well, if things come up, can we call you? And so I formed a group called the Grant Society, Ghost Research and Native Teachings, to help people who have these natural abilities to understand them and to help use them in a positive way. What people do call for are house cleansings. But it turns out that 90% of the time, the house is perfectly fine, and it's the people who have the problem.
Interesting. Were you, by any chance, affiliated with the group at KCC that was doing the paranormal activity? Yes, no, maybe?
No.
It was very short-lived. They got the boot.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was always wondering if there were circumstances. Sometimes, Hawaii seems to be a place where people have some level of comfort, maybe with the supernatural, with the otherworldly. But when there is resistance, what do you find? What are the classic things when people are naysayers? I encounter those people all the time. You're just saying things. It's just an apparition. It's all in your mind. You were tired. You need to clean your eyeglasses. Blah, blah, blah.
Right. That's just based on a lack of understanding and study and hearsay. And believe it or not, I enjoy having skeptics and non-believers on my tours because they're the best ones to have. Because the tours are presented in such a way that it's not meant to insult anyone's intelligence. It's done respectfully. And so by the end of the night, we either have that person becoming a believer or saying, well, I still don't believe, but this was some great information that I have to research myself.
That's always code speak for now I have to reassess my thought process.
Absolutely.
That's the way they say it, and I love it. So we have some images here that have been shown of various groups that you're showing various spots.
That's at the Japanese Culture Center. That's the Mysteries of Mo'iliili tour.
Fantastic. So you have various neighborhoods that you go around town and tell the stories of those locations.
Absolutely. Downtown Honolulu. There's one coming up that we can't talk about yet because we're still putting a few things together. Our most active tour, and this tour has had people walk away crying. People have had emotional experiences, is the ghost tour out to Waianae.
Fantastic. So we're going to go on a break. Think about whether your neighborhood has stories, because I'm sure every neighborhood has many, many stories, some of them known and some a little less known. This is The Art of Life.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel of ThinkTech Hawaii. Won't you consider helping ThinkTech? We're a 501c3 Hawaii nonprofit corporation, now in our 15th year. Our model and very existence depends on ongoing contributions from our underwriters. We are very appreciative for their support. We're hoping you will consider becoming one of our ThinkTech underwriters. Unless our underwriters prefer to be anonymous, we publicize them on thinktechhawaii.com and on our daily email program sent to some 7,500 subscribers, our live stream talk shows, and our OC16 productions. With help from our underwriters, we have developed a high-tech video studio in Pioneer Plaza, and we now live stream 25 talk shows per week, covering science, tech, energy diversification, community, sustainability, and globalism for Hawaii. And we stream our earlier shows all night long. Our live stream is on thinktechhawaii.com. Check it out. We also upload all our shows to youtube.com, where we get 18,000 views per month. And we broadcast 12 hours per week on Olelo 54 and 3.5 hours per week on OC16. We also do monthly luncheon panel programs at the Laniakea, and we write a monthly column for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. We're really active. Our plans this year include improving the coverage, content, and production values of all of our programs, and including more issues and guests relating to the neighbor islands, either by Skype or in person. If you agree with our mission, I hope you'll consider helping us. If you have any questions about any of our activities, or if you'd like to discuss our underwriter arrangements, please write to me at j@fidel.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for considering this suggestion, maybe even including you among our underwriters. Mahalo, I'm Jay Fidel of ThinkTech Hawaii, and I approve this message. If you approve of it also, please give us a call.
Welcome back. This is The Art of Life. I'm your host, Willow Chang Leon. If you don't have the luxury to watch our show live on Fridays, well, you can always catch us on YouTube. We do archive all of the back episodes there on the ThinkTech Hawaii channel. You can also type in Art of Life with Willow Chang, I believe, in the browser, or you can check it out on Facebook, where I also do the archival process and whoop, throw all those things up there with some additional things about our guest as well. So it's a great opportunity to find out a little more about our guest. Our guest today, I want to mispronounce her name the way, what would they call you, Lapanui?
Oh,
Rapanui?
Yeah, Glenn used to say Lapanui all
I
the
love
time.
that. But it's with a K.
It's with a K.
Kapanui. Mr. Robert, Mr. Lopaka, as we said, many things, practitioner of the arts, Hawaiian arts, of storytelling, a historian, a conduit, and a channeler as well. I'd like to know how your background in hula, for those who are maybe unaware, they might think that hula is strictly dance, but it's really a way of life.
Absolutely.
And it encompasses everything, understanding about the flora and the fauna, the stories, the creation, the creation of the islands, the various, what some might call myths, the sacred approaches, and the whole decorum for a culture is all tied into the practice of hula. And you are a kumu. How has your studies and your life as a kumu, how does it influence your storytelling?
I think, I know that in the aspect of hula, there is storytelling as well.
Right.
And I can answer a question in a way that involves storytelling and hula. And a lot of people ask me, how do you come by these stories, especially these ones that you write? The only way I can answer that is I get it the same way that I get it from hula. And it's, for lack of a better term, it's divinely inspired. There's this connection that happens, and it grabs me, and physically I'm here, but spiritually I'm gone. I'm somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so for dances like Hole Waimea, I am the Nakipu'upu warriors. I can feel the pelting rain. I can feel the emotion of myself and my comrades lamenting leaving our loved ones behind, but yet bravely going into battle to fight for what we believe in. Same thing with the story. If there's a certain story on the tour that I connect with at the time, physically I'm there at the tour in that dark place like Kaniakapupu, but my spirit is there, and somehow I'm connecting to it. And people have said when they've watched me and that they've known me for years and they watch me tell a story, it's like it's someone else.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't say that in an egotistical way.
No.
I don't try to elevate myself, but that's the only way that I can describe it from what other people have seen. I have a young man now who dances for me, and he danced ballet for 16 years. And the way he talks about ballet and hula, it's, you know, I can see it in him. I can see him making the connection. And as he's talking, I can see his body start to mold those things. And so it's magic to connect to someone like that in a hula sense, but it's also magic to connect to 350 people, you know, who fill a theater and who are riveted to the spot, and for 3 hours don't move, don't even go to the bathroom, not even a cough.
Not even a shishi break.
Yeah.
Wow. Sugoi, as they say in Japanese. That's super wow. I'm curious about this. So you talk about this ability to connect. I understand, I relate. But for those of you who think we're just totally off our rocker, trust me, we're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. We're not trying to pull the kappa over anybody's eyes.
Yeah.
So when you relate to something and you feel it in that visceral way, when there's a connection to something beyond yourself, because sometimes it's exhausting. It can be exhaustive and exhausting. And at different points in our life, we relate to different things, or we maybe share, or we're drawn to things that serve a purpose at a moment in time. Is there ever something that you say, okay, this part of my life, I feel there's been closure, as some people might say, or I don't feel compelled to tell or share this story at this point because that I will put that aside and now it's time for these stories. How do you determine what stories will be shared and told, if it's challenging, or if you feel that it's already pow, or if you have something else that you want to share? What's that process for you?
It's so funny you say that. You know, since meeting my wife and eventually becoming married, there's certain stories associated with certain parts of my life that I feel are no longer necessary to tell because it's not needed anymore. But now that my wife and I are together, there's other stories that I've pulled from 10, 12 years ago that are relevant today. And the great thing about having Tanya in my life is that we have such a connection that while we're driving somewhere, I'll be thinking something and she'll say exactly what I'm thinking, you know, in the next sentence. And there's a very funny ghost story between us where at 1:30 in the morning, my phone went off and she was upset, you know, who's calling you at 1:30 in the morning. And I roll over and I look at it and I show it to her and it's her, she's calling me from her phone. And she rolls over and looks at her phone and her phone's not even on.
Ooh, snap.
Yes, and so she says, answer the phone. I'm like, I'm not answering this phone.
Wow.
You know, but now, you know, before, and I've never revealed this before meeting my wife, a lot of times I didn't know how to let go of those emotions from those stories, those connections.
Right.
And it would stay with me for several days, maybe a month, and it was hard to come out of it. But now that I have my wife, there's a whole different focus, you know, and I can't explain that either, but it's like a transition from a few negative things that held me back, and now I'm in a place where I'm being supported artistically, and in a professional life, we own our business together, and there's support now that wasn't there previously.
Right.
And so it's also permeated within our family. When my daughter met my wife, she just completely, I mean, they're like partners in crime. They talk about me behind my back, stuff like that.
Never stink, of course. Oh, Dad. You know, I wouldn't take the idea of storytelling because everyone who has existed on the planet has stories. We all collect stories. I always say we create our own mythology. And that's not necessarily to imply that we're all a bunch of liars. Heavens, no. But we edit things, we embellish things, we have our highlight reel, we have stories of explaining things that maybe were not what happened, but it was our understanding at the time. And then we go through life and we carry these things and collect them like barnacles growing on a boat. And then sometimes we decide maybe that's not what happened, or we don't feel the need to tell that story. I'm not really sure why I brought that up, but I think it's a way for people to relate to storytelling, because they might think, oh, well, this person's different than me because they tell stories and they have an audience and they're in a graveyard or they're at a school. But everyone tells stories, whether they're at the bar or they're at the water cooler or whatnot. And it's very powerful. And even we were talking about hula. I mean, when people ask me, how is hula different then? And then there's all these different dances that might use the pelvis or the hips. So a lot of times people on a superficial level say, they use the hips and hula uses the hips, and this seems feminine and that seems feminine, and that's how they think they're the same. But one of the things I try to assert is that hula is a narrative dance form. So without the story of what you're trying to convey through your chant or your song or your movements, it doesn't really hold the same significance. Whereas there are dance forms that you can move for the sake of it being beautiful, and it doesn't have to be tethered to a story. So it's very different. And also having a history of being sacred, the origins of sacred dance done with a sacred purpose and focus.
Absolutely.
So.
There was a presentation at a lab theater at Lyrid Community College, and it was part of the dance class. And forgive me, I forget the name of the dance teacher. Mm-hmm. And I still kick myself in the butt this day for missing it. And I've bugged Paul Cravath for 5 years. Send me the DVD.
Yeah.
But apparently it was an interpretive dance of the legend of Gilgamesh.
I was in that. It was in 97.
Right.
And it was so radical. When that was happening, I'm not sure if people realized how amazing that undertaking is, to make a theatrical presentation of the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yes.
And it was an amazing show. I have never even seen the DVD, so don't feel bad.
Okay.
Well,
that's weird. Okay.
I got to play Shamhat,
wow.
the temple priestess, and at the time it was explained to me as a temple prostitute, and the alarm bells went off, and I just thought, I'm not a prostitute, and prostitutes are like on Merchant Street, and they're filthy, and they're whores, and they accept money for sexual deeds and acts. I wasn't aware at the time the great significance. He tried to explain it to me, but I was young. And now I realize it's like, oh my, what an honor to be in such an amazing show with an amazing cast. But I digress. I digest that too. But you were talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh. You wanted to see the DVD.
Right. It struck me as something unique and significant that you could put dance form to Gilgamesh, because of the kind of story it is and the story we know it to be.
Yeah.
I've always had a radical idea, and we have to find a few kumuhula and dance people that are brave enough to do a dance interpretation of the legend of Lohiau and Hi'iaka.
Yeah.
I know many halau have tried, and it's beautiful for what it is, but it's restricted to this, and I don't know how to explain this when it actually should be that, for lack of a better term.
Very inclusive.
Yeah.
And as we've seen in this one episode, how inclusive storytelling and culture and family, that continuum we talked about is, we've run out of time, which means I'm going on record to formally invite you to please come back when you have time. I know you're very busy, but I'd love to have you again as a guest, because I feel like we've learned so many interesting things today.
Okay.
Thank you
so
much.
Right.
And then the website is?
mysteries-of-hawaii.com.
Fantastic. Summer's coming up. You've got a lot of free time, folks. Go check it out. Don't wait for Halloween. There are stories 365 days of the year.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's The Art of Life. We'll see you next week. Aloha.